All right, let's dive into a wild one today. We're going to explore a legend that sits right at the crossroads of secret government tech, time travel, and this hidden war for the future of all humanity. It's called Project Looking Glass, and honestly, it's one of the most fascinating rabbit holes you can fall down on the internet.
So, at its very core, what is this all about? Well, the legend revolves around a pretty mind-blowing claim, a top-secret project that could apparently achieve, and this is a direct quote from the source material we're looking at, futuristic prediction and interdimensional time travel. I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a movie, but the story has this incredibly detailed and stubborn mythology built around it online.
Now, just to be super clear, our goal here isn't to prove this legend is true or false, not at all. Instead, think of us as your guides. We're walking you through one particular document that has compiled all the lore, all the stories, in one place. We're just here to explore the claims, the connections, and yeah, the contradictions, just to see how a modern myth like this gets built.
Okay, so first things first. What is the legend of Project Looking Glass, really? According to the story, this was the ultimate black budget operation, completely off the books. And the main idea is that they created a device that didn't let you travel through time, but it let you look into the future. Or to be more precise, it let you see all the probable futures based on what's happening right now. Think of it as the ultimate fortune-telling machine for the entire planet.
And here's what's kind of surprising. For a story with such massive claims, the legend itself is pretty obscure. The document we're examining points out that you can only find mentions of it in fewer than 1,000 online forums. So it's a super niche story, but for some reason, it's one that just refuses to die.
Now, you'd think if a project this massive ever existed, there'd have to be some breadcrumbs, right? At least some tiny hint in the official public record. Well, the author of the document we're following went looking for exactly that.
And this is really the key question, isn't it? People who believe in this story often point to a few little mentions of the words looking glass in some official papers. But how strong is that evidence, really? The document lays out three main pieces of evidence. First, there's a 2011 academic paper that uses the looking glass as, well, a metaphor. Then you have a Homeland Security document from 1996 with just a single, totally unexplained mention of the phrase. And finally, there's a CIA memo from way back in 1959 with some vague wording that people have tried to tie to the project. And here's the kicker. Even the author who compiled all this lore admits that this proof is incredibly thin. They write that the references seem to have an indecipherable meaning in and out of context. So, in other words, there's no smoking gun here, just a few random phrases that could mean anything.
But the story doesn't just rely on those documents. Like any great legend, it's connected to a much, much larger universe of conspiracy theories.
The whole idea is that Project Looking Glass wasn't some standalone program. No, it's presented as part of a whole constellation of secret projects, all supposedly sharing tech, people, and goals with other big names from the conspiracy world. And the lore ties Looking Glass to some real heavy hitters. The strongest link is supposedly to Project Montauk, another legend about time travel experiments. Then you get connections to Project Pegasus, the infamous mind control program MKUltra, and even the Philadelphia experiment, although the document we're looking at calls that the weakest link of all. The story also pulls in some really powerful cultural symbols. I mean, the name Looking Glass is a pretty obvious nod to Alice in Wonderland, and that whole theme runs deep. And more recently, the source we're examining highlights that the QAnon movement picked up on these keywords, folding this older legend into a much more modern and very political narrative.
So why? Why would anyone even build a device like this? Well, according to the legend, the whole point was to see the final outcome of a huge, hidden war for the very soul of this planet.
This is really the heart of the story. The Looking Glass wasn't just for fun. It was a strategic tool. It was used by these shadowy groups to see which of two completely opposite futures for humanity was going to win out in the end. And the stakes, as the legend tells it, could not possibly be higher. You've got Timeline 1, a future of freedom, sovereignty, and empowerment for everybody. And then you have Timeline 2, a total dystopia with a one-world government, elite control, and mass deception. The story frames this as the absolute final battle for our future. But here's the biggest twist in the entire legend. The story goes that as the operators used the Looking Glass to look past the year 2012, they saw something they thought was impossible. The two competing timelines, they just vanished.
Every single possible future suddenly merged into one single outcome. The good guys win. According to the story, the positive future became a mathematical certainty. Okay, so we've explored the claims, the so-called evidence, this epic narrative, but after building up this entire universe, the source document that we've been following this whole time takes a very, very sharp and unexpected turn. And then you get to the final page of the summary, and the author just drops this bombshell. After 49 pages meticulously detailing every aspect of the lore, they write, and I quote, "This book is about nothing. Project Looking Glass does not officially exist in the past or present. It's just a stunning pivot that completely reframes the entire story you just read."
So you have to ask yourself, why? Why build this whole thing up just to tear it down? Because the author's final point isn't really about time travel at all. It's about the world we live in right now. In an age of fake news, AI, and disinformation, the story of Project Looking Glass becomes a lesson, a huge case study in why we all need critical thinking now more than ever. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. Look, Project Looking Glass probably isn't real, but the story is incredibly powerful. It taps into our deep desire for secret knowledge, our hope for a guaranteed good future, and our suspicion that powerful forces are pulling strings behind the scenes. So the real question is, in a world where we're drowning in information, what makes a modern myth like this one so sticky? Why do we want to believe?